So I have a theory that's based on history that Ronald Reagan, Mr. R&R himself, is the greatest civil rights president post Jim Crow. Now, what I mean post Jim Crow, I mean after LBJ. Yes, after LBJ, Ronald Reagan is the greatest civil rights president post Jim Crow. And when I mean civil rights president, I mean many people would throw names like Nixon out because a lot of desegregation happened under Nixon, but Nixon just left it to the states, and the states, because of their judges, had to desegregate. The judges were just following the orders of the state judges many times. Or should I say, the school boards followed the orders of just the state judges of their particular state, lovely state. What I mean is, if you're talking about federal wise, if you're talking about what the federal government could have and has done for civil rights, I would say Ronald Reagan is the best civil rights president based on federal power and action. And I'm going to tackle the whole myth of the whole Iran Contra affair because a lot of people who basically likes to just automatically blame white supremacy or the white man for their failures just love it, just gets their panties wet, just loves the whole idea of the Iran Contra affair, and they flooded drugs into the hood, the black community. Newsflash: before crack, they had heroin, and before heroin, it was alcohol. People who had addictive traits always been addicted to something that's bad. And the Iran Contra affair, what, like tackles like maybe 1 year, maybe two max. There's been people hooked on drugs for like 30 years in the hood, off and on. 30 years in the hood, off and on. Drugs are still flooding the hood. Drugs are still flooding the ghettos. And it actually peaked. The crime peaked like in the 90s under like Bill Clinton and Bush rather than Ronald Reagan. So let's just cut that off. But one thing that I'm really happy that Ronald Reagan did is that he signed the MLK Day. Now, many people would say that he signed it reluctantly and at first he wasn't for MLK. Yes, this is true. He wasn't for MLK because he's not for the expansion of the federal government. But he turned around and decided to be for it, just like LBJ wasn't for originally like civil rights, but he turned around and decided to be for it because of JFK. And you don't punish a person for being wrong once in their life. You punish them for being wrong all of their life. And Ronald Reagan, just like LBJ, wasn't wrong all of his life. There was a point in his life where he was wrong, but then he adjusted and adapted with the times. And I respect that. I respect you if you were wrong at one point and then change your mind rather than you just being perfect at all points and you never had a struggle. So that's one thing. One thing that MLK did, well, I should say Ronald Reagan did, was sign in MLK Day. So I really give him big props. I give him big credit for that. Another thing that I was impressed with Ronald Reagan is that he signed a accord which gave the Japanese internment camp survivors like money, like reparations for lost businesses, lost wages, and just pretty much losing their homes. And a lot of people talk about reparations this, reparations that, but Ronald Reagan was the few presidents who actually gave reparations to persons of color. How many presidents can actually like tote that? Can actually tote like, hey, I actually gave persons of color who was screwed by the system reparations rather than just talk about it. And that's why I respect the man. And now, when I talk about civil rights, I'm talking about like people just think like civil rights is just a black hole and it's just exclusively about black people. But I weigh civil rights in how you affect all people, not just black people. Now, I would agree a person like LBJ would be a better civil rights president, but he's the one who ended the legal process of Jim Crow. So, of course, he's number one as a civil rights president. But regardless, if we're talking about post Jim Crow, then it is definitely Ronald Reagan. Post 60s, when it comes to like the best civil rights president, it's hands down Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan also installed the first female justice to the Supreme Court. Now, that has to count for something. The progression in female civil rights, like their first female judge was under Ronald Reagan. No other president can tote that. Putting the first female judge in the Supreme Court, like, how is, like, come on. And Ronald Reagan also signed a bill giving amnesty to millions of illegal immigrants and making them citizens of this country. This bill is one of the reasons why California turned blue, because Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to millions of illegal immigrants. A large percentage of them were persons of color. No other president can tote that. You have modern presidents like Barack Obama, who was called like the deporter in chief, who had the DACA bill, but Ronald Reagan had the DACA bill on steroids. The bill was called the Immigrations Reform Act. And here's an old cartoon of which like a lot of conservatives and a lot of people who hated Ronald Reagan actually like made fun of the bill and called it amnesty for millions of illegal immigrants, which it was, and it definitely helped them, disproportionately helped out a large percentage of persons of color. Here's a image of him signing the bill, the Immigration Reform and Control Act. It legalized millions of illegal immigrants overnight, and it really helped out persons. And here's Ronald Reagan next to Coretta Scott King as he signed the MLK Day. Now, if he was good enough for Miss Coretta, I say he's good enough for me. And let's talk about the Iran-Contra affair, because I know this will come up in a comment. And the way I explain the Iran-Contra affair is, imagine if somebody kidnapped your daughter and then said, if you don't give ransom money, we'll kill her. You give the money to the kidnappers, and the kidnappers take your ransom money and then buy drugs and then flood a community with drugs. Are you responsible for the community being flooded with drugs because it was used with your kidnapped money? No. If you feel like yes, then that's how the Congress felt when it came to the Iran-Contra affair, because many people who traded money for hostages and arms for hostages got detained and then got sentenced. I get that they broke a law which state that you couldn't trade money for hostages, but anywho, I see that more of a George Bush kind of thing because he was over the FBI than Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan said he was ignorant of the whole operation, but he took account for it because he's the president and it happened under his watch. And as I said before, the Iran-Contra affair thing happened like 1 year. Like the hood been flooded with drugs for like 30 years, for like 100 years. So that 1 year, I guess you could blame the white man or blame the system. But overall, 1 year, one odd year doesn't account for the fact that people continuously smuggle drugs all over the border, and people are continuously in the hood addicted to drugs, and in rural places they're addicted to fentanyl. They're addicted to all of this, and it had nothing to do with Ronald Reagan. I blame the Iran Contra affair on George W. Bush because it seemed like more of his alley due to the fact that he was over the FBI. But anywho, that's my video. Leave a like. And also, George W. Bush sent a pardon for the people part of the Iran Contra affair towards the end of his presidency. Nobody talks about that. But yeah, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'm out.